Unë pas plagosjes Petritit, se mas kanonit që është akoma jeton kjo kanon, unë jam ndrut nga jo mëna, se po të dal, pa besë natyre, ato marrin gjakun.
Marrë automatiku ma ka vun kapten, s'ka shkrep, e ka mosh pra për zdyt, ka zhy 2 herë në ajër, edhe ka desh me bo zvarritje. Zvarritje s'bana unë, e zhujtje, ka që është ajo do thënë pjesë ma e përmledhme, do thënë. Edhe pikërisht ata do paguaj më shumë se gjitha.
From the Arts and Culture Center in St. John's, Newfoundland, here's Margaret Atwood.
In my part of the world, we have a ritual interchange that goes like this. First person, lovely weather we're having. Second person, we'll pay for it later. The motive for this lecture is curiosity, mine, and my hope is that the writing of it will allow me to explore a subject I know little about, but which for this reason intrigues me. That subject is debt. Like all our financial arrangements, and like all our rules of moral conduct, in fact, like language itself, notions about debt form part of the elaborate imaginative construct that is human society. What is true of each part of that mental construct is also true of debt. How we think about it changes how it works.
Edhe tani për 2 vjet të gjysëm, gati po afër më po 3 vjet jam që kam tinguar, kam përdorur të gjitha mënyrat që të arrij pajtimin me familjen e hasmit. Pleshni se me ndonjë do bani diçka se nuk do rri gjithmonë kështu. Ose të çojë lufta, që më dëro më dal mani, më vra prap, se s'ka rrugë tjetër.
Bosët me kishte pranu ofertën e atëherës.
A që kresensën? I shepa.
Do thënë që llogaritët ke buka, pa llogarit anën tjetër materiale për fëmijët. Një kohë si e lidhën me punën, nuk bëhet fjallë që t'jetosh. Pa mu dorë, ku i thënë paka shumë pak ndesat në rishën punët, në rishën fjallët, në rishën dalin të lirë. E në dhe në kush në i nima, në i disha, në i dorë, në dhe një shtytje. Nuk mund të imaginoj, sa vështirë e kam.
I started thinking about the subject of debt for a number of reasons, but among them was my puzzlement over a turn of phrase, one you don't hear very often anymore. He's paid his debt to society. Crime does not pay, we also used to say, optimistically thinking this meant that crime does not ultimately reward the criminal, whereas it might mean instead, pessimistically, that crime skips town and stiffs you for his bills, the rotten deadbeat.
As you know, I was a prisoner myself in this country, and in fact, as is now, I think, quite close to being established, I'm completely innocent of what I was convicted of. Before I got into the maw of the U.S. legal system, I did not realize the country has 47 million people with a criminal record, most for relatively trivial offenses, or that prosecutors won more than 90% of their cases. There, at Coleman, I had seen the courage of self-help, the pathos of broken men, the drawn faces of the hopeless, the glazed expression of the heavily medicated, 90% of Americans judged to require confinement for psychiatric reasons are in the prison system, and the nonchalance of those who find prison a comfortable welfare system compared to the skid row that was their former milieu. America's 2.4 million prisoners and millions more awaiting trial or on supervised release are an ostracized, voiceless legion of the walking dead. They have no representative and are no one's constituency.
This is the statement from the victim of a break-and-enter I did. Ever since the break-in, I've had trouble feeling safe in my own home. I have lived here for over 15 years. Until that day, I had never feared someone would be in my home. After the break-in, my family convinced me to get new locks, as well as an alarm system in order to increase my security. At my age, I find it difficult to sleep at night, fearing that someone will come in again and take my things, or even hurt me. I have been asked by my family if I want to move, but this is my home, and I do not want to leave.
The trickle-down theory of economics has it that it's good for rich people to get even richer because some of their wealth will trickle down upon those who stand below them on the economic ladder. Notice that the metaphor is not that of a gushing waterfall, but of a leaking tap.
Conciencia, derrotando barreras, no representando fronteras que separan a nuestra gente. Libera tu mente. 107.9, la tuya, la tuya, la tuya, la tuya, la tuya, la tuya.
Va con saludos para nuestros compas por allá en el Farm Worker Village y a toda la gente en el campo 24 horas. No se vaya, esto es Radio Conciencia, la tuya.
No lo creo, pero tenía yo como 15 años cuando llegué. Casi cuando llegué me junté con mi esposa, vinieron los niños. Cuando yo era niño, 13 o 14 años, mi padre murió. Y no teníamos lo suficiente para sobrevivir. Y bueno, pensé venirme a los Estados Unidos para mejorar un poquito.
We've been farming at a very high level of productivity for a long, long time. We do 150, 250 million a year in sales, depending on the year and the markets and the crops. We started with a medium-sized company in Florida, and we're able, through a lot of hard work and showing up 7 days a week, to expand it into the company that it is today.
De hecho, todo el trabajo que hay en las labores lo he hecho. Y bueno, el trabajo me gusta, pero lo que no me gusta es cómo tratan a la gente o los problemas que hay en el trabajo, es lo que no me gusta.
What happens when people don't pay their debts, or can't pay their debts, or won't pay their debts? What then? And an extension of this question, what if the debt is one that by its very nature cannot be repaid with money?
The rig exploded, we really just heard about it on the news. We were seeing the fires and all the fire boats trying to put the fire out. On Friday, we heard that the rig had broken off and had fallen into the Gulf of Mexico. And by Monday, I got a call from the Alabama Department of Environmental Management. And when I got this call and was told that the oil is leaking, but it's one thin micron on the top of the Gulf. It's like as thick as your hair, it's nothing. And then he did an analogy of how many teaspoons in an Olympic-sized swimming pool it would be, and that's when my back just went straight up. What is he saying and why is he lying?
Kodi I kanunit është kod shumë I vjetër, vërtet është një kod shumë I vjetër për shqiptarët. Sigurisht mund të themi se në qendër të kanunit është hakmarrja e gjakmarrja janë pjesa kulmore e dënimit të një krimi shumë të rëndë në shoqërinë shqiptare. T'ja shpërblej, t'ja kthej, ti realizoj nderin në përkëmbur ta çoj në vend dhe që nga ky moment familja që ka kryer dëmin është e detyruar të qëndrojë ngujuar përndryshe mundet të përballet në çdo kohë, në çdo moment me sulmin, me vrasjen ose me veçgjyqësinë e palës tjetër, me gjakmarrjen, pra ose hakmarrjen. Pavarësisht se në jug janë zbehur, po malet I kanë ruajtur më me konservatorizëm sepse nuk kanë hyrë në marrëdhënie me botën e jashtme.
Problemi është çështja toke. Ato kanë domethënë ka qenë pjesë kufiri që në realisht ishte në këtë pozicion, për që diçka që kishte hap pikërisht. Baba im, as zhysh, as ka sërgjysh, as dikush larg që nuk e mban me njëri. Kishte, do thënë, këtë afër. Po ta thënë, mban be merre. Jo, në bez baj me marr do marr. Ashtu boti pas edhe mu kapten. Nuk do marr edhe s'do marr, pikë, as sot.
Ka qenë manjak, më thënë, në realitetin, nga disa pikpame shumë dopta. Ka shku ka gjetë gru në arë të punu. Ka shku të shul gardin të urzu katë. Se s'ka pas toka të ka pas shkun larkë. Gruja ka fol, I ka dhënë shtymin grus.
Kuptot e punë, së nisha shtatzane. Njeri I pësën vetë atë dëmlimet. Dhe kanë shku fëmija, kanë lejmë në lajshin direkt. Ka arë kënë moment, Sa drejtën fillimi nuk donim kur me kalun këtë ekstrem, po ai nuk largoj, nuk tërhiqej fare. Kështu që detyru me kalu. Tashin vetë mbrojtje çdo gjë, se fëmia, gruaja, kuptoj e po.
Ertu shatë bërtit e nuk kam hik. Më zhene në prep, filloj të gjyj me gurë, me kësho. Edhe I kam thënë, lej gurt, hajde flasim si njerëzit. Dhe me thënë, jo, në të vras, do bajt, do kthej, ku dion, do gjojmë gurë, të fëmijët e vetë duke largote prej veti, se kësho kishte të mërojnë.
Kam marrë automatikën, më në kam gjytë nda. Gjytë me plekos, në realitet, se a ke parasysh se po t'ishe punë me vrau, këshëm të rrëtë të shek në automatik. Hajtë ta unë ta blokoj që me spata e të më përse fëmijët, sa I kishte kalu një nuk e ja pas vetë moje.
Sa I ka qenë momenti, dhe më thënë si, a marrë automatiku ma ka vunë kapten, s'ka shkrep, e ka mush pra për zdyt, ka zhuj 2 herë në ajër, edhe ka desh me bo zvarritje. Zvarritje s'bana unë, e zhujtje, ka që është ajo të thënë pjesa ma e përmledhme, dhe më thënë, gjarja sa dite.
Çajo mungon më shumë, domethënë.
Liria. Ti jemi lirë për në kodon.
I think it's very revealing how the paying of debt includes being set apart from the community. So you could see immediately this question of the separation from the group is the fundamental concept, which in and of itself doesn't tell you very much about for what purpose. Is it to put the person, send the child to his room, right? Time off, go and think about it. So that's one way of looking at it. Or is it because in and of itself, isolation is punishment?
Eastern State Penitentiary opened in 1829. It's considered to be the world's first penitentiary. And so it wasn't just about punishing the criminals who were brought here, but hopefully reforming them, making them penitent. So while the inmates were at Eastern State, they were going to be taught a job skill, and they were going to be put in a separate system, an isolation system, where they were going to be given time to reflect on what they had done, and hopefully they would be a better person when they left.
How do we sort of strike a balance between trying to get these people to a position where they have less excuse for breaking the law, and on the other hand, the sort of stick as opposed to carrot side of discouraging them from breaking the law? I don't think prison is the answer. But the concept of people paying a debt to society for some statutory infraction of some gravity, but having done so, having put it behind them and it being forgiven, is a concept that I think has largely been lost sight of sociologically. There is a tendency to stigmatize and permanently ostracize those who have put a foot wrong to that extent.
Paying back, this to me is not paying back. I'm by no means innocent. I did what I did and I knew what I was doing. But now it seems to be the kind of, this solves every problem. Jail is like instead of addressing the problem, they just take the person and put them into the prison, and now the problem is the person and not the problems that put them in prison.
Oh, this is him when he was a baby, 2.5 months old. You want to see that? He would leave school before it's over to avoid the bullies beating him up after school. Even in the winter, Pauline and I would go in the night with a torchlight looking for Paul. I guess he felt lost, so he tried to lose himself. We would find him sitting down cowering in construction place. Wouldn't come home in deep knee-high snow. Those days there were powdery snow. And once we found him to the back of the schoolyard, tied up in a tree, blue, freezing, because apparently he had answered the fellows who called him chocolate face and Packy. So they tied him up and left him there.
5 minutes to count, 5 to count.
At
At 13, 14, I was using drugs every day. My whole world started kind of revolving around getting some dope to put in a needle. I get out, I steal, I buy drugs, I try to keep myself high, and I get caught within a couple of weeks and come back to prison for a few years. That's pretty much my MO. I'm out for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Hell, I've been out as little as I got arrested the same day I got out of jail. That's good enough for a warm-up.
What ancient inner foundation stone underlies the elaborate fretwork of debt that surrounds us on every side? Our sense of fairness. This concept that there is an underlying balancing principle in the universe according to which we should act appears to have been almost universal. In Chinese culture, it's the Tao or Way. In Indian culture, it's the wheel of karmic justice. If not in this world, then in the next. And if not now, then in the future, the tit-for-tat cosmic law of reciprocity would see to it that you'd be returned good for good and evil for evil.
I think there is this strong and deep sense that human beings are often out of kilter with what people in those days perceived to be the order and balance of the universe. And there's also a subterranean, unconscious perhaps, reflection that human society is unjust, and a worry about that. Because all human civilization is unjust. It is based on the oppression of large numbers of people.
What you get fairly early on are those who believe that the natural sense of justice is, and this is a slight corruption of the appropriate meaning of the word, but is a Darwinian matter where people should take what they can get. And you don't have to push that very far before you are getting into the oppression of the weak by the strong and that sort of thing. And it is a constant and very, very difficult problem to sort those two things out. You want to treat people fairly, but you don't want to discourage merit and superior talent. But you don't want superior talent asserting itself by the application of brute force or what we might call misdirected cunning. You know, I mean, if while you're sitting here, somebody, sneaks over my gate and steals your car, I mean, I guess it's a kind of an ingenious and bold move, but it's not the sort of thing that should be encouraged.
Voy por ahí.
When we think about where the tomatoes from Immokalee end up, they're everywhere. They're everywhere from sort of Walmart to McDonald's. They appear cheap when they're sold in supermarkets or when in hamburgers. And so we don't realize that we are in debt to workers who are paid far below minimum wage and held in degrading and inhuman conditions, because that debt never features, and it never features in our consciousness. And as consumers, we're encouraged never to think about what it is that we owe. We're never encouraged to think about the process of production of the goods and services that we consume.
At today's hearings, we will hear about the challenge that still exists for migrant farm workers in Immokalee, Florida, and throughout the nation, how far we have to go to provide genuine fairness and justice for this vulnerable workforce.
What is going on in the tomato fields of Florida right now is so bad that it defies words. The defendants have been accused of threatening, slapping, and kicking farm workers, chaining them to a pole, beating them, locking them inside U-Haul trailers, keeping them in debt, and forcing them to work for free. I find it incredible that in the year 2008, there is still slavery in the United States. And I find it even more incredible that the tomato growers of Florida and some of their fast food customers continue to deny that these abuses exist.
This is a replica of the truck that was used in one of the last cases of slavery, the Navarrete case, where workers were forced to live inside a truck like this that is used to transport produce. These workers were forced to sleep in here. They were chained inside this truck. That's why we have this as an example of what can happen to a worker in the extreme conditions of slavery. When we talk about slavery, we're not talking about just like cases a little bit more abusive than what the norm is. We're talking about actual situations where you are afraid, you fear for your life while you are producing the food.
Debt is a kind of political memory. That sounds odd because debt we normally think of as purely, about money. But again, that already is to make half the point, that money itself is political. The way that money flows is political. The way that hierarchies of power are established so that one group owes another group, that's political too. And if you don't, if that sounds a little odd, then think of another word that signifies debt, but actually puts it in its political context. Think of the word reparation.
humans have become a rogue species. We share with other species two very important ecological qualities. The first is a tendency to completely fill all accessible habitat. The second is a tendency to use all available resources. But we're the only one that's been able to take the cap off of that and actually release ourselves to grow indefinitely. It's almost all rich countries exist in a state of what we call ecological deficit. They're overshooting their own domestic carrying capacity or biocapacity. So each year, as they are in that state of overshoot, their deficit is increasing, and it's essentially adding to the ecological debt, which you might think of as the amount of the ecosphere that has been drawn down as a result of human overuse. So the simple reality is that most wealthy countries are the major contributors to the annual ecological deficit and the growing ecological debt, the debt that human beings owe the planet. And frankly, there's no way around this except to back off.
Mobile Bay watershed is an estuary where the saltwater and freshwater flow and mix. Estuaries are known as the nurseries of the sea. It's where all the babies are born and come and go. They come in the falls and the winter, and then when the spring rains come, they flush back out with the big freshwater flush into the Gulf to go live their lives. It's the breeding ground for all of life throughout the Gulf and throughout our delta and up through the states. We have so much life here that can be impacted, that's so very, very fragile, that has to be cared for.
Well, our whole family on both sides is seafood orientated. My grandpa on my father's side, his whole life he caught oysters. That's what he done to raise his family. He specialized in catching oysters. He worked in the months with the R in it. In the summer months, he stayed at home, planted gardens, you know, whatever needed to be done. And on my mother's side, she had 13 brothers and sisters, and my grandpa on that side, all he done was gill net fish.
There are about 4,000 rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. What we know now about BP and what they did is they cut every corner they possibly could have. Seven or 8 days after the rig exploded, I reached out to my family of waterkeepers, and I got the best advice, the best information from people who have been through it before. Bob Shavelson, the Cook Inlet keeper who dealt with Exxon Valdez, he called me and said, okay, here's the deal. First thing is they need to skim and boom. They need every boat that can suck up oil off the Gulf of Mexico they can find. Number two is burn it. Burn it is okay. And then the third thing he said is no matter what they try to do, no matter what they say, do not let them use chemical dispersant. It is wrong, it is toxic, it's poison, and it's the worst thing that they could possibly do, period.
I'll pause here to consider the word revenge, which according to the Oxford English Dictionary is derived from the Latin revindicare. And revindicare is derived from vindicare, which means to justify or rescue or liberate or emancipate, as in liberating a slave. Thus, to revenge yourself upon someone is to re-liberate yourself, because before doing the revenge, you aren't free. What holds you in thrall? Your obsession with your own hatred of the other, your own vengefulness. The score that needs to be settled is a psychic score, and the kind of debt that can't be paid with money is a psychic debt. It's a wound to the soul.
Këtu ka hy plumi, këtu, edhe dal ka në shpinë. Do të thënë në shpinë është prap ma kështu ma madhe. Kështu në shpinë.
Po tjetë puna për problemet, ai sot do ishte i vdekur. Për plagosë që ka marrë do ishte automatikisht i vdekur. Ai nuk e di edhe sot sa ka mangën trupit vetë. Nuk e di as sot. Se nuk ka mundësinë e zezë, atë shpërneke nuk e ka fare. Nuk e di vllajën sot. Zora trash, tash jesinë gjithsesi ato. Zora trash e ka me 15 cm ka të heshme, ka të vagon. Nuk e di fare edhe sot. Ato, mundësinë e zezë e ka të shku me tepër tej, e ka të riparume në kirurgji, që nuk e di as sot, nuk e di vllajën.
Edhe sot nuk më vën, por peshën e ka. Se edhe mu mi vret syt kur ta shoh kështu në trupin. Por kështu është, kështu e lejon. Edhe do kisha riparu që mos duket, s'kam desh dhejet, me riparu. Do kisha bëj operacion plastik, do kisha bëj operacionin tjetër. S'kam desh dhejet një bë.
Që ka bo Leshi është përzit dhe këti, sepse Leshi ka lujar me në këta. Toka është tokë, në funit gjithë të dalë. Vjen i farkuaj e qdo prej se lem tokën e të shikon. Me veprimin që ka bo Leshi është shumë përzit dhe këti, por duke logorisht rrethanat e kushtet, që i vendos vetë, se sa borç është Leshi ndaj i liri, dhe këta. Për këtë jevë.
Se liqi shteti li shteti.
Sepse në bazonën e bazë një kanunit e vjetër që është para 200-300 vjetër, që kuptan. Ose për mu për atë punë.
S'ka pas të tyre në me burgosën.
A kuptan?
S'ka pas jetë në burgosën. Më pas jetë me hes me dorën teme, ju me burgosën.
I think where these cycles of personal revenge or clan or family revenge are absent, what you see, I think, as a common feature of this absence is the state having acted as an acceptable arbiter of disputes. So it seems to me that what we see having replaced, which is the original human instinct to go and seek revenge for yourself, is the building of the rule of law.
Te digo, aquí en el pueblo, tú veías a un contratista y los contratistas eran los reyes. El contratista era como la máxima autoridad. Aquí le tenías más miedo al contratista que a la misma policía.
There have been abuses, and they're horrible, the abuses that have taken place. Whether it's the trafficking that has come up, whether it's been the slavery issues, not slavery issues, the slavery cases that were uncovered, whether it's payroll abuses, whether it's sexual harassment, all of those are 100% unacceptable to us. I believe that they're 100% unacceptable to all of my competitors also. It doesn't mean, though, that it doesn't happen.
I'm glad that Reginald Brown from the Florida Tomato Growers Exchange is here with us today. Mr. Brown, you've said more than once that it would be un-American for a fast food company to pay an extra penny per pound for tomatoes, with the extra penny going to the migrants. Well, I say it is un-American to allow slavery in the year 2008, to deny that this problem is real, and to vilify and attack the one group, the Coalition of Immokalee Workers, that has done more than any other to fight against slavery in the state of Florida.
Cuando se empezó eran como 6, 8 personas. Cuando empezó la coalición, lo que es hoy la coalición. Ese grupo fue creciendo y bueno, hoy, 2011, tenemos más de 5,000 miembros.
García López, ya está pagada, ¿verdad? Sí.
Oscar Pérez.
¿Cómo?
Oscar Pérez.
Si la ven aquí...
La razón por lo que me involucré en la coalición fue por lo que nos hablan de los derechos, defendernos de tantos abusos. Algunos negocios donde se compra el tomate, mucha gente compra tomates sin darse cuenta de, me vale, no sé de dónde venga.
The system that has brought all this about, the system under which we are told we will thrive and prosper, is the free market. But the freedom in free markets really isn't about everyone's liberty. It's about the liberty of those with money. Because under a free market, you are only as free as the amount of cash that you can wield and the power that in turn confers to you. If you are poor in a free market, freedom is just another word for nothing that you can afford. And so the freest agents in our economy today are the large corporations and the mega wealthy. And for the rest of us, we live with the consequences, the environmental and the social consequences of their actions.
Quite frankly, I'm increasingly of the opinion that capitalism as we know it is defunct. It's run its course. It depends on a fundamental assumption of unlimited resources, of an unlimited land base, of the infinite capacity to expand. And for a period of time, perhaps the last 150 years, that was a kind of adequate first approximation of reality, because the human enterprise was tiny compared to the vast capacities of nature. But now the human enterprise has almost reached the same scale as nature. And with the Gulf oil incident, we see another disjunction between the financial and the ecological world, because whereas BP has acquired enormous finance capital as a result of its exploitation of nature, it will be decades before the ecosystem recovers in the Gulf of Mexico.
We had 200 million gallons of oil released. We put 1.8 million gallons of chemical dispersant on that oil. What the chemical dispersant does is it drops the oil below the surface. Absolutely terrifying that they would consider doing something like that. All it was doing was making it into little tiny pieces all throughout the water column and makes it more bioavailable. The number one thing that they did that scares us to no end is they inserted dispersant right at the bottom of the Gulf. They didn't even use it the way it's supposed to be used, which is before it hits a marsh, you break up the oil. I mean, every single thing about it was a PR move, an attempt to say out of sight, out of mind. And what you can't see doesn't exist.
What really gets me about the dispersants is that United States Coast Guard, if they come down and there's a little oil sheen on the water that where a boat pumps out, and if somebody throws some dishwashing detergent on it, it disappears. It just goes together, floats off, and they would write you a ticket. They'll tell you that's worse than leaving all there. And they wrote a ticket on this Gulf Coast for that if they can catch somebody, but yet they can do it on a mass scale.
After some badgering from the White House, BP has put $20 billion into a fund towards cleaning up the environment. But there are a couple of economists, a few economists in fact, have put out a study estimating the value of ecosystem services provided by the Gulf that are being compromised, and the valuation of the services that have been damaged by the Gulf oil spill range from $34 billion to $640 billion. And if the lowest estimate of the environmental cost is $34 billion, then $20 billion looks like a bargain.
Being rich doesn't help you. Now let's get the bird's eye view. Today. If you were among us today.
Atëherë kanë ndërhy do njerëz mik këto, e kanë marrë këta me qira, e kanë zbrit poshtë gjithse, nuk i le të hasmin po me moneta atje. Me bujqësi kanë pas jetoshën normale, kishën pa problem. Atje jetesën kanë pas tepër normale. Morin 8 vjet, po 7 vjet, që toka sa prek me dorë atje, është djerë komplet, se kanë bashkët madhe, kanë pas gjithat tokë.
Two brothers and my sister. And rest with me. And here I learn. As mother, father. Mother, father. Albania.
Që gruaja nuk sa ka qenë 7 zanë, ka qenë muajin e 8. Edhe nga përplasja atë ditë, mas 3 ditë, ka shkuar nesër, gjenë tra në spital, nuk pranon me shtru nga problemet e se po vjen na vrasin familja e tij, tash këta doktorët këto, kanë ndërhyrë njerëz shumë me shtru dhe ashtu operuan muajin e 8.
Hemorragji, edhe kështu kanë fut direkt në sallë.
Djali ka një muajin.
Djali ka një, domethënë kalin me i pesh ekstreme, që nuk kishte kush pres që jeton si fëmijë i gjallë, 1 kg 800 gram kalin si fëmijë. Kam një 30 ditë, djali ka një në gjamë si zëgjë inkubatori. Më thënë, komplet pa shpresë dhe ata, po i madhe i zëtë, dhe doktor, dhe shpetu në pranë një jetë.
Pra nuk e zënë fare thot me nusën e leshit,
absolutisht. Absolutisht në qoftë edhe fjallet ma të vogle ditë nuk e kam ndru me 1%, me nusën e leshit. Sepse normalisht, më thënë, mu kap me i themen, ashtë ma, më thëjë, kam bëj këtë punë për gënyme, që është gjysht me i themen, edhe pikrisht ajo ka qenë me barë, dhe më thënë, në 7 zanë se të kohë, thënë, imaginoj sa me marë dhe t'isha unë. Edhe pikrisht ata do baguje ma shumë se gjitha. Do baguje pjesën që ka gënjë, atë fjallë do baguje.
Officially, this Pennsylvania or separate system was abandoned in 1913. It kind of collapsed really under the weight of its own lofty idealism. They couldn't really support what they were trying to do. And today, isolation is really just being used as a form of punishment rather than a form of penance.
You can make something interesting out of almost any fragment of life. You just have to look at, turn the telescope around and look at it that way, even if it's an artifice designed to be a placebo against demoralization while you're doing it. My view is fundamentally that human life is sacred in every form. I didn't feel it was my place to disparage it just because it happened to be truncated by the confines I was in. While it was a prison and hardly comparable to living in my own home like this, it was a life that many people in the world would envy. I mean, there were interesting people. No one bothered me. Neither the authorities nor the other residents bothered me at all. I had quite fine relationships with many people that I keep up with since I've gone. And I had access to the internet, access to television. I could listen to the radio whenever I wanted. I had practically unlimited access to books and magazines and periodicals. I mean, there are countless hundreds of millions of people in the world who couldn't claim that. Indeed, I suspect that in the place where I was, if you took down the fences and just opened the gates, probably a fifth of the people would cling to the furniture and not want to leave, because they have a basic support system.
From what I was told by my lawyer, coming from the Crown Attorney's mouth, is like, Paul, this woman survived the Holocaust for you to come and violate her home. And we horse traded this poor lady's jewelry for, I think maybe I got enough to do 3 or 4 hoots of crack. That was it. That's what I got out of it. And it just kind of feeds itself, because then I feel so guilty about what I did that I want to keep getting high, because I feel like crappy because of what I did. And then I go out and I do it again, because I don't want to come down and feel like, what the fuck are you doing? Why did you do that? And then now when I had to sit in court and listen to the Crown Attorney reading her statement about what I did to her, and how she feels and how she's scared of me, and now I know where she lives, and I'm gonna come back if she's safe. And I feel really ashamed of myself.
How fascinating that we say a person redeems himself when he's been guilty of a disgraceful action and then balances it out with a good or noble one. There's a pawn shop of the soul, it appears, where souls can be held captive, but then possibly redeemed.
Muy buenas tardes a toda nuestra comunidad. Estamos muy contentos de poder acompañarlos aquí detrás de controles, dándoles la bienvenida en esta hora de la tarde. Gerardo Reyes, el Flaco.
Hoy estamos viviendo un día histórico en el suroeste de la Florida.
La coalición de trabajadores de Immokalee ha firmado un acuerdo sin precedentes con la compañía de tomate más grande del país, Pacific Tomato Growers, hoy en este día. Con este acuerdo se garantizan nuevos derechos como el derecho a trabajar libre del acoso sexual.
I've had bridges created for me by others, places that I could not get to on my own. And this was one of those situations where I saw very clearly that there was an opportunity to create a bridge that hopefully other people would be willing to cross once they saw that it was safe. Organizations, by their very nature, are slow-moving. And this was, we felt, one of those moments in time that was going to require a real solid shove. And that wasn't going to happen from within the organization. That needed to happen outside of it.
Por años habíamos estado pidiendo eso. Hicimos huelgas generales, hicimos marchas, hicimos una huelga de 30 días. 230 millas de marcha para pedir solamente diálogo directo con los rancheros.
You know, is it payback? I don't know. I think it's just change. Change is always possible. And it just requires an open heart and a willingness to see the people on the other side of the table as human beings. Today, we're standing here to speak out as a company and a force in the agriculture industry for what's right.
You have to remember what Confucius said. He's asked by his disciples, which of your teachings can we put into practice all day and every day? And what is the central thread that runs through all your teachings and pulls it all together? And he says, shu, likening to the self. Look into your heart, discover what gives you pain, and then don't do that to other people. Never treat others as you would not like to be treated yourself. And all day, every day. Sometimes today we have a saying, well, that's my good deed for the day, you say. And so for the next 23 hours, you can return to your life of selfishness, greed, exploitation, unkindness, all day, every day. If you do that, Confucius said, you experience a different mode of being.
Besë mirë dita ka bornen. Mirë dita ka dhënë bornen në çdo lloj momenti. Mirë dita ka vrarë dhe ka faj. Ti do të jesh imitator I Jezus Krishtit. Po tjetër, me hap zemër. Me hap zemër. Bëni shpoll, ke edhe tjetër.
Unë qose, unë nuk kam përtrar dakord me vllahun tim, unë nuk kam mundësi se unë nuk I thjesht me vllahun tim.
Ne po kemi zakon me moj beje. Dakor, të moj beje në bazë zakonit, që nuk ka vendosur në grun, edhe do le të vrasin. Po se nuk e përkrakush mbet.
Unë vetën e kam bie sysh në fillim që I kam pas tana mundësit me vrahun, me myton.
Të kisha mundësi të thoje diçka Leshit tash I të drejt, çfarë do t'i thoje?
Mos ta pafsh fytyrën kurr. Edhe rreti ku jesi I mirë.
Që të pajtohemi edhe të shkojmë ku kemi qenë dikur, që hynim dhe dilim Çdo që ju lan dorë ligjit.
At one profound level, forgiveness cannot be extended because it's just not possible. It's the same notion that you cannot make the past, you cannot rewrite the history. You have to deal with this as a new reality, in which it's preferable that sentiments of vengeance and so on are not fueled. And that's what I suppose forgiveness means. But forgiveness is a link between the past and the future. It's not the restoration of the past prior to the injury.
This is little bits of the BP Deepwater Horizon oil disaster. Some people are calling them asphaltenes as if that makes them less toxic. But they are not for the public consumption, and they're also bite-sized for birds and other little sand crabs and even fish as these float by, which gives us great fear because they're continuing to consume them. After just 1 year, we know so little about what our nation's largest environmental disaster did to us and how we're going to come back from it.
You know, we're used to disasters here. That's our way of life. It happens in one way or another all the time, and we paid attention to it, not dreaming it was going to be as bad as it got. We still doing repairs from Katrina.
Which brings me to my little reading for today. It's from the last chapter of my book, Payback, Debt, and the Shadow Side of Wealth, and it's about Ebenezer Scrooge, whom we know through Charles Dickens. Let's contemplate Scrooge as he would be if he were among us in the early 21st century. I'll call this one Scrooge Nouveau.
Scrooge Nouveau has a corporation. In fact, he has many of them. He collects them. It's a hobby of his. He doesn't much care what they make, so long as they make money. In his recreational tastes, he's much like Machiavelli's Renaissance prince, though he doesn't poison people, or not directly. He only poisons them as a regrettable but inevitable side effect of cost-benefit analysis. It would cost too much not to poison them. And the subsequent lawsuits can be written off as a business expense. Which of your own futures would you like to visit? Asks the spirit. I've got more than one, Scrooge asks. The spirit waves his briefcase, and Scrooge barely recognizes his future self. He's gaunt and frantic and pushing a wheelbarrow full of cash. As he watches, his future self tries to exchange this mountain of money for a can of dog food. But it's no deal.
Yes, it's a VOC. It's a volatile organic compound.
Right. Yeah. So that orange right there.
Everywhere you see orange in the fluorescent light is oil.
You're witnessing a moment of hyperinflation, says the spirit. This has happened many times in the history of money. In effect, money simply melts away like the illusion it always has been. This is terrible, Scrooge whimpers. Spirit, show me no more. The spirit waves his briefcase again, and Scrooge finds himself in a cheerful, bustling, medium-sized city. All the people are riding on bicycles or driving around in compressed air vehicles and using power from wave generation machines and from solar installations on the tops and sides of their buildings. There is Scrooge himself, looking very fit, in a hemp suit, signing several enormous checks for conservation organizations. Miraculous changes have been brought about through microeconomics, whereby many amounts are lent at fair interest rates to very poor people, and also through massive and voluntary debt cancellations on the part of rich nations. How probable is this future? Asks Scrooge. Not very probable, the spirit admits, or not yet.
Y es bonito de que esto esté empezando. A rato puede ser mucho más interesante.
Esta gran victoria que está marcando sin duda el futuro y que cambiará la realidad de la producción de comida en la Florida. Pero todavía necesitamos seguir adelante con la campaña.
Scrooge clutches the spirit's arm, which shrinks, collapses, and dwindles down into a bedpost. His own bedpost. What a dream, he thinks. But so far, only a dream. I have time to make amends. In the non-fictional world in which you and I do something called existing, and Scrooge does not, we've been discussing various ways of looking at debt. Like all our financial arrangements, and like all our rules of moral conduct, in fact, like language itself, notions about debt form part of the elaborate imaginative construct that is human society. Because it is a mental construct, how we think about it changes how it works. Maybe it's time for us to think about it differently.
Maybe we need to count things and add things up and measure things in a different way. In fact, maybe we need to count...
duhet të marrim të gjitha faktorët së bashku parasysh. Kemi nevojë.
Is this likely to happen? My best offer is maybe. Scrooge climbs out of his bed and goes to the window.
Scrooge se baja de su cama y va a la ventana. Ahí está el mundo. Es muy bella, con los árboles y el cielo.
It used to look solid, but now it appears fragile, like a reflection on water, a breath of wind.
Like a reflection on water, a breath of wind could ripple it, and it could vanish.
A breath of wind would ripple it, and it would vanish. I don't really own anything, Scrooge thinks, not even my body.
Everything I have is only borrowed. I'm not really rich at all. I am heavily in debt. How do I even
I'm not
begin?
really rich at all. I'm heavily in debt.
How do I even begin to pay back what I owe?
Where should I start?